Well, we asked to speak to the Defence Minister, Harjit Sajjan, about this matter. He declined that request. So we've asked retired Lieutenant General Guy Thibault, who served as Canada's Vice Chief of Defence Staff, the number 2 soldier, and he joins us now from Ottawa. General Thibault, so much to talk about here, but I want to start with your reaction to the news that we've learned about over the past 48 hours. 2 top military leaders playing golf with the former Chief of Defence Staff himself under investigation for sexual misconduct. Your thoughts on that?
Well, thank you, David. I'm really sad and disheartened to see an officer of the quality of General Mike Rouleau, our Vice Chief of Defence Staff, who ultimately sent out a message yesterday that explained his actions. I think he was acting in very good faith in terms of reaching out to former Chief General Vance in a way that would continue to respect the fact that all of our members, including those who find themselves in difficult circumstances as General Vance, would continue to be treated with respect and friends and colleagues. And I think that General Rouleau had nothing more in mind than to reach out to see how General Vance was doing. Chose to do it in a very public way. This is on a golf course. This wasn't something behind the scenes. I know that there's been a lot of discussion about, the golf and country club and, private affair, clearing the course. Nothing could be farther from the truth. And it was simply an opportunity, I think, for General Rouleau to connect with General Vance, see how he was doing. And unfortunately, I think that it has really got caught up in the whole ongoing story of dealing with sexual misconduct, conduct that clearly is an anathema to the Canadian forces that needs to be dealt with. So, I know that General Rouleau felt he had no choice but to tender his resignation, to move on. I think that's a sad outcome for his genuine attempts to do the right thing, I think, with General Vance.
So let me push back on you a bit, just to say, where do you find the balance between trying to support your former colleagues and making sure that their well-being is taken care of, while also respecting that there are sexual assault survivors within the Canadian Armed Forces, some who have left, some who continue to serve, and will see this as the wrong signal?
Well, I think that those are two parts of the reality that you have to deal with, and both have to be treated with compassion. And I know that in terms of the current leadership under General Eyre, along with his counterpart, Deputy Minister Jody Thomas, that they're working very hard on the inside of the department to make sure that the prioritizing the victim support, the giving them agency, ensuring that they're listening to the perspectives, all while investigations into allegations are being done thoroughly, properly, as expeditiously as possible. And this is one of those areas where you have to allow the investigations to carry on and to arrive at the conclusions as to what these allegations are all about. So I know that on the departmental side and the Canadian Forces side, that providing the support to victims is an area where there's been a lot of concern that we haven't done sufficient to really listen to the victims and to make sure that they were supported. And I know that that's where General Eyre is clearly focused on with those members who are serving. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, those who have been accused of misconduct still deserve the same respect and treatment and concern for their welfare as any other member of the Canadian Forces.
You spent 4 decades of your career inside the Canadian Armed Forces, and of course during that time you would have shied away from making any kind of political sounding statement. You're out now, and we see calls from the opposition once again that the Defence Minister be replaced after 6 years in that role with various problems that have continued. What do you make of the opposition calls that Harjit Sajjan be removed and replaced?
Well, I think that ultimately, when it comes to the Governor and Council appointments and for the Cabinet appointments, well, that really is for the government to decide whether the ministers that they have their confidence and have the confidence of the members of the Canadian Forces. Minister Sajjan has served, I think, with great distinction. I think he's in earnest in what he's trying to do for the Canadian Forces and for the men and women who serve. That's, I think the only comment I would make is that, I believe he's trying to do the right thing. And these are very difficult, challenging issues to confront. And, I think that in so much as when we kind of look at what needs to be done, leadership at all levels of the organization, from the political level to the central agencies, to the department, to the Canadian Forces, right through the chain of command, all have a responsibility, I think, to do better than we've done in the past.
I just look at sort of the map of the senior leadership in the Canadian Armed Forces right now. So the former Chief of Defence Staff under investigation for sexual misconduct, the man who replaced him, removed, at least temporarily, and that could become permanent. There is an acting Chief of Defence Staff. His deputy, now gone earlier than planned because of this golf game, as temporarily anyway, is the head of the Navy, replaced himself temporarily by a delegate. These are the most senior ranks of this organization. What does it do to the organization itself?
Well, I would be sort of denying reality if I said that it didn't have a tremendous impact, because first and foremost, we are an organization which, when you look at the top, it's actually a fairly short bench to do everything that we ask our senior leaders to do. And so, when we look at the reality of the transfer of responsibilities, it means others are kind of filling in. There's real work that continues in our operations abroad, at home, whether it be dealing with COVID, our operations overseas. Capital procurement programs need to be moved. Budgets need to be kind of moved forward. Strategic plans for the future force need to be developed. And we have real world security challenges. And so, this is serious in terms of really the disruption that we've got at the senior most leadership ranks. Having said that, the organization has a lot of depth. Our operational units and our operational commanders continue to do a great job of training the men and women of the Canadian Forces in their primary duties every day. Our operations overseas continue unimpeded, but I do think that there are certainly issues that aren't getting a lot of attention right now as a result of the turmoil at the top.
The last question I would ask you just briefly, because of the length of your career, you lived through a very dark period in the history of the Canadian Armed Forces. 1993, Somalia.
Yes.
Is this as dark as those days?
Yes. I think that there can be little doubt that the crisis that the leadership is in right now is a crisis not only because of the issues of sexual misconduct and behaviors in the Canadian Forces, which really are inconsistent with what we expect of men and women who serve in the Canadian Armed Forces, and to have members who have been treated poorly, have been hurt by other members of the Canadian Forces. That's horrific, and so that's something that is completely different from what Somalia was all about. But additionally to the treatment or mistreatment and the harm caused to our members through sexual misconduct or racist behaviors or hateful conduct, we've now got a question of confidence in the leadership, both from within the forces, looking up at their leaders, and I think as Canadians looking at the Canadian Forces leadership. But I can say, David, that having worked with the men and women of the Canadian Forces for my entire career, that the vast majority of the men and women who are serving are honorable, dedicated, working to really perform their duties to the best that they can. And that includes the senior leadership cadre, folks who really have dedicated their lives to the service of Canada, the Canadian Forces. And, I think that we should remind ourselves that they're trying to do the right thing here as well to make sure that the institution gets better and that they can continue to deliver excellence in the missions at home and abroad for all Canadians.
Guy Thibault, thank you very much for your time. Appreciate the insight.
Thank you, David.
Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.